done something. Yeah, that breakfast. I mean, if we need it. you doing?
Well, good luck with that. I mean, how many people are going to run? We have 20, 30 candidates now? Somebody else out there. I agree with that. One barrier. Well, good luck. By the way, it's tragic what's happening in corrections. We're trying to talk about that this morning when we get a chance. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I wasn't here.
Go ahead, Mike. How are you?
Well, okay, remind me later if it's July.
By the way,
Good to see you. Yeah. Packed house. Folks right on that.
Gary, how are you?
Morning. We can keep this up at 28.
Could everyone please move in
Beautiful day.
so we can get started promptly? Can you hear? On the sawmill.
You remember these are live old.
that's why you just always
Yeah.
So I just want to know when it's 11:30, I'm going to take off so I don't miss it. They told me like right.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Is this on?
doesn't matter.
Oh, I know.
It is on?
That's where some people have gone wrong. Feelings that was different than what they are.
All right. July 8th.
I told her to remind me later. It's down the road.
What's that, July 8th? What?
And is that going to be?
Good morning and welcome
Is it going
to the League of Women Voters Legislative Forum. My name is Jean McMenamin, and I am moderating this morning. The League of Women Voters is a trusted political organization. Members do hands-on work to safeguard democracy. We are directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong. All members of the community are invited to join League of Women Voters. Persons not eligible to vote are welcomed as associate members. Today, our co-sponsor is the African American Museum of Iowa. Please visit with them in the back of the room after the forum to find out all the good things that they do for our community. Their statement, preserving our past to enlighten our future, educating the public on the African American heritage and culture of Iowa. I'd like to thank all of the legislators who are here this morning for coming. I'd also like to thank Deb Roberts and her team for helping with the arrangements, and to Mercy Medical Center for the use of this facility. There are cameras around the room. The forum is being taped on behalf of MediaCom and IMON by ProVideo and will be live streamed at the ProVideo Productions Facebook page. League will tweet the link and provide it on League of Women Voters Lynn County Facebook page. Also, Robin Cash from Neighborhood Network News will provide the video at neighborhoodnetworknews.com. There may be other representatives from media here today that I'm not aware of. Information in the back of the room and out in the hallway for a directory of elected officials, legislative committee assignments, email sign-up sheets are available. Please pick those up or sign up as you choose. I'm going to get started with a question, and we're going to start, as I understand, last month we started at this end. Senator Horn's going to go first. We'll work down, and the next questions I will start with the next person, and we'll work around. Feel free to give your time to someone else if you think it would be a better use, if you don't particularly care to respond to the question. and then a minute and a half time limits for questions and responses. First question: why was this bill, referring to Chapter 20, rushed through the legislature? Given the opposition and the millions of dollars in out-of-state funding supporting it, how can you defend an action that Iowans don't want? Senator Horn?
Well, I think I'm on the opposite side. I didn't defend the action. I was against it. I thought what we had was working. I go back, and I was the only one, my name was brought up several times, that in '74 I was there when it was originally written. And Governor Ray supported it. A Republican governor, Republican House members and Senate were Republican. They passed it. And at that time, you know, we had, I don't know, 3 or 4 of our teachers jailed in Keokuk. And Governor Ray said, I don't want that. I don't want our public employees being jailed. So what we need is something like what he mentioned, the collective bargaining, so they have another resource rather than strike. They had a way to go out and say, this is what we'd like to do. And it took a long time. In the House, is 2 weeks we debated the bill, trying to get it the way we wanted it. And it was compromised all the way. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, in the sense that the compromise was for and against. We'll say against the labor unions and for the labor unions. But anyhow, I keep looking down at the sign there and saying you're cut short. So that's about it for now with a synopsis. Thank you.
Okay, that was good. That was good. I kicked off. May I go?
Yes,
All right.
please.
I'm Senator Mathis. It was rushed through the legislature, despite what anyone says here today. It was rushed through the legislature. And here's why. You know, we have a lot of colleagues from across the aisle who will say, government should run like a business. We now have a president who says government should run like a business. No business with 184,000 employees would be secretive about their HR plan, that they would, the leaders, and Senator Reiser, you teach a leadership class in business, no one would do this. HR principals and businesses are trying to be fair to their people. They're trying to make sure people do the right thing, so that because unemployment is so low here and it's hard to attract, you know, good employees, HR practices are becoming very stylized to the employee to make sure that you can keep the employee, that the employee is happy, and they're getting good wages and benefits. Why would we do anything different for our state employees? It was rushed through, absolutely rushed through. And when did our teachers become public enemy number 1? Why? I just want to tell you that we fought. We had 80 amendments, not all of them got filed. We debated for 48 hours. We did tag teams so people could sleep while others were up on the floor. And we did what we could to stop this. Not one Republican voted for any amendments.
The audience, could I please ask that you refrain from any kind of comments, clapping or anything else, so we can get through all of the questions. I'd appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Rob Hogue, State Senator here from Cedar Rapids. And I think Senator Mathis has conveyed the tip of the iceberg of how Senate Democrats feel about the process that was used. It was the ugliest thing I've seen in my 15 years in the Iowa legislature. I did call it Russian-style politics because we were asked to vote on amendment after amendment after amendment with no explanation, no debate, no discussion, and that's just wrong. And again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Here's what I want to remind people in this audience. This is not the way government is supposed to work. Government can actually do things to help people, to make our communities and our state better. And the answer is we need a renewed spirit of citizenship and organizing and participation across this state. We cannot let people do this to us. And I want to say one other thing is, when I look around at the problems in our economy today, it is not that public servants have too good of wages or too good of benefits or too many rights. The problem in our economy is that we have stagnant wages and inadequate benefits for so many other people, and all of the money is getting sucked up by the richest and wealthiest corporations and people in this country. That's wrong, and we really do need to address that problem.
Good morning, Todd Taylor. I'm glad that so many people are here today. This is what democracy looks like. This is the largest crowd I've ever seen. You know, the Capitol building is built to accommodate crowds up in the galleries there, and I've never seen so many people there. We had public hearings rushed through, but I've never seen so many people. I heard 4,600 people came through the magnetometers the other night. But they definitely wanted to pass this bill and have it law, which has been law for about 23 hours now. They wanted it to be law before we got in front of you, good people, in the public. So we can talk about the law, we can talk about the process, but it's already happened. And that's the travesty. 43 years ago, I know Wally and Tom Riley were there. The Democrats and Republicans worked together to build a law that works, and it continues to work, and there's no reason to change it. And they said, well, you're going to hear a lot of interesting things about let's let the law work and how we got to change the processes. But what happened here is they passed a law that's hopefully only going to last until the next election.
Please, we're going to move through. Go ahead.
Thank you. State Representative Ken Reiser. This was a very large bill, and it's very complicated, and I would recommend that anybody who's interested in my detailed view of it, go to my Facebook page, because I posted on there why I voted for this bill. But the question was whether or not this was rushed through. I would remind you that the Iowa House has every single year for the last 6 years tried to pass collective bargaining reform, and it was always stopped by the Iowa Senate. So
Could you please refrain and let the speaker speak?
So this should be no surprise. We had a change election in November. This bill went through the normal process. People file bills, it goes to a subcommittee, it went to a full committee, we had a public hearing, and then we did debate in the Iowa House for 3 days. So the bill had a good, it was well fleshed out, and in fact, we got a lot of feedback that made us change the bill. So we had a pretty significant amendment based on all the feedback we got. So I don't believe that it was rushed in any way.
Representative Bennett.
All right, thank you. I'm State Representative Liz Bennett from Cedar Rapids. I have never seen anything so appalling during my time following politics. And what is most ironic to me is we all know something big happened in the last election, and what everybody says it was about was working people getting fed up with an economic system that privileges a few at the top and disadvantages everybody else. And what happened in the Iowa legislature is just one more load on the backs of working Iowans. So it was extremely disappointing. People are saying that it wasn't rushed through. In no forum last year do I recall ever receiving a question or a request, anybody shaking my hand and saying, I really have to talk to you about this. I really think that teachers and people plowing streets just have it too good. And I think there may be a few people out there who really are frustrated with their economic situations, but when we're at the point in a state where we think that our public servants, who hopefully are good middle class folks, are the top of the echelon in the state, people who are feeling that way need to be asking their bosses why they're not getting paid fairly and why they don't have good benefits. We need to stop funneling everything to the top and putting our feet on the necks of people who are working hard.
Representative Henson?
Thank you all for being here today. I respect you all to come and hear what we have to say. First thing I'll say is we've heard a lot about follow the money this week, and I think it's very unfair to say that everybody took money from the Koch brothers. Look at my campaign and disclosure report. It's public record. I took no money from them. And I think you should check that out. And I think everybody should look in this room who took money from whom, because I think that speaks volumes. So I want you to make sure that you do that and do your due diligence before you point fingers. I think that's only fair. Also, in response to the claims that this moved through and with unprecedented procedures, Democrats also used time-certain procedures in 2008 and 2010 in the Iowa House. One of those bills was for open scope bargaining for collective bargaining. So this is not unprecedented. This is not the first time that's been used. And we did follow the process. I am a new representative. I have dealt with several bills already, and they all go through the same exact process. Bill drafting, subcommittee, where people, it is public and it is posted, you are able to come and attend. Then it also has a full committee hearing, and then it has debate on the floor, and then it passes. This bill also got a public hearing. Many of you came to that public hearing, and many of you I talked to at the Capitol as well. So that is my statement on this bill. I did support it. My mother was a teacher. She was an art teacher and a guidance counselor. Public teachers were not the enemy number one. I was protecting the public in voting for this bill. Thank you.
Representative Running? Representative Running?
Representative Kirsten Marquardt, you know, this week when reflecting upon it, the governor signed the bill yesterday, had a little time, and it's so unfortunate that corporations won this week in the state of Iowa and not the people of Iowa. There is so many lies out there, and I think it's really important to know what the lies are. When people are saying that local control is winning, it is not. In fact, this stifles local control. And it's so case in point because we had all these local contracts that tried to settle as fast as they could this week because they really work with the good relationships that they have built over the years with their co-workers and the people they work with. Arbitration, it's a lie to say the arbitrators' hands have been bound. 97% of the cases that went to arbitration, 97% of the contracts settled did not go to arbitration. Of those few that went to arbitration, half of them went for the employers, half of them went to the employees. And saving money, we had an inconclusive LSA Fiscal Bureau note. And we do have some Republican legislators that did, and they weren't in tough districts, they weren't in tough seats, and they sat. I know Representative Heaton sat down and talked. He's from Mount Pleasant, and he sat down and he talked to somebody from Lynn County. And that person walked away and said, you know what, I know he really heard me. And this week, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of emails and phone calls I received. And I too listened to people not only from my own area, but across the state of Iowa. And I appreciate you here, and I too will not forget this. And I hope that the rest of Iowans will not forget this moment moving forward.
Please, hold your...
Representative Zumbaugh. I reside in House District 95. I sit not too far from Christian. I've gotten to know Art Steed a little bit. We've discussed our districts. They are vastly different. I'm from a rural area. I've sat down with, I see some familiar faces that I sat down with at the Capitol. I walked through there was a large crowd there Monday night. I walked through, had talked to several people in that. I sat through most of the meeting. In the end, I went home and I talked to people in my district, and I feel overwhelmingly that I did vote yes, and that was the majority of House District 95's favor.
All right. Please keep your comments.
I'm Representative Art State from Cedar Rapids. Are you sure this is on? Is this on,
Yes.
everybody? Thank you. And I just wanted to thank all of you, too, for being here, showing the support. I'm from a family where I have 11 brothers and sisters, and I know that if anything ever happened to one of them or they were under any kind of attack or whatever, that we would really stand behind them. I feel like I just gained about 200,000 new friends and brothers and sisters. So I wanted to thank you for being here. Instead of working on jobs for the state or families sustaining wages or for water quality or mental health or health, what I think we've seen is an unrestrained horde, okay, of wolves going after collective bargaining and our public employees. That's how I feel about it. I don't think people were listening. They were moving with maneuvers to shut down debate, to put people in smaller rooms than they can hold when we had the whole House available for hearings. So I'm very upset about it. I'd like to get back to some of the real issues that this state's looking forward, because I was elected to represent the people and to listen to their voices and do what's best for the common good in this state. And I think some of the people here need to have some filters on who they listen to and what they're doing. So I think that as a result of this, that there's a partisan wall that's been built. A partisan wall, and I can feel it. There's a mistrust between one party and another as a result of this, because this came in like wolves in sheep's clothing. Thank you.
We'll start with Senator Mathis with this question on educational savings accounts, House File 2090. Is it the intention to use public tax dollars to support religious education at parochial schools, or even a little more in depth about the ESAs?
We've been told by our education chair of the policy committee that ESAs and vouchers will not be taken up this session. I want to go back. I go like this if you know, okay. So I want to go back, though, to a statement that is being made about the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers fund Americans for Prosperity. They get thousands, millions of dollars from all across the United States. My statements on the floor of the Senate were not that certain candidates were getting money from the Koch brothers. My statements on the floor of the Senate, if you want to go back and listen, were about them influencing public opinion. They did a mailing, mass mailing out to all Republicans across the state of Iowa. It was a card that had lies on it. It twisted the facts of what's really happening, and that's what they spent their money on. They spent a lot of money in trying to influence public opinion, as does Priorities for Iowa, that's run by Jimmy Centers, who's on Governor Branstad's staff. In their mission statement, they say they are nonpartisan. They are very partisan. That's all they do. They came after me in my election and did 3 or 4 mailings, and I don't believe that that's nonpartisan. So we have a homegrown group called Priorities for Iowa that receives hundreds of thousands of dollars from others outside of the state. Tiger Management. You can go down their list.
I yield.
You can go down their list and you can see, go like this. You can see how much money they have received from people from out of state. It is appalling. It's appalling. Americans for Prosperity is the same way. They also have these shadow groups called Center for Patient Care. And the Koch brothers have given at least $21 million to that. And then they come into communities not only to try to alter races at the top of the ticket, but also school board elections, like we saw in Coralville, the Coralville area. They also try to alter and get onto boards and commissions. So people, if you have ever wanted to run for anything, or you want to be part of a community that does good things for our neighbors, get on your local boards and commissions and start speaking up, because it starts with school boards, it starts with planning and zoning commissions, and it's all the way up. So get involved and be awakened by this. I'm going to keep talking about Americans for Prosperity because their lobbyist was in the gallery all night long watching the activities. And then when the governor signed the bill in private, who did he shake hands with? Drew Klein from Americans for Prosperity. He posted a picture shaking the governor's hand. And don't think for 1 minute that Americans for Prosperity wasn't part of that bill that was written. Even our senators could not say who wrote those bills.
Senator Hogue? I would like to expand on that education savings account. Will private schools be held accountable to IDEA for IEPs, 504 plans, transportation requirements, and others that public schools are being held to? And will they accept all students?
Okay, so just to follow up on what Senator Mathis said, one other point. I am extraordinarily concerned that we have a democracy that is now for sale when very extraordinarily wealthy people can take basically their spare change cup, $900 million, and try to buy an election. And in this process, Republican legislative leaders, Governor Branstad, and the Koch brothers were synced up because that's why the Koch brothers group ran over $125,000 worth of TV ads over the last week while this bill was under consideration. And that is a problem. Now, on the question about ESAs, Senator Sinclair said we're not doing it in 2017. So unless she doesn't know what she's talking about, we're not doing it in 2017. That could mean it's in 2018. I do want to ask people to think about something here on this. Our first obligation has to be funding our public schools, and we're not doing it adequately, so that's that first problem. But I don't want to turn this into a war between private and public education, because our private schools do a lot in our communities. We have some programs that have been supportive of parents who want to do that. So let's avoid the war, let's stick together, but we cannot do this when we're not adequately funding our public schools, and we haven't adequately funded our public schools for years. Thank you.
Representative Taylor?
Oh, I yield his time.
Oh, you yielded.
There we go. I am not a fan of out-of-state interests getting involved in Iowa politics, and I was actually a huge victim of that in the last election. Michael Bloomberg's group rolled in on me in this last election, a New York State group. They spent a whole bunch of money. They bought 5 mailers for my opponent, and they accused me of voting to eliminate background checks for gun purchases, which was an absolute lie. I support background checks. So I'm not a big fan of out-of-state interests. The Koch brothers thing, though, I got to tell you, I think it's a smokescreen, because when you look at how much money the Koch brothers gave to Republicans, and you compare that to the money that other special interests have given around this discussion, particularly the unions, because if you look at the biggest contributor to the Iowa Democratic Party are the unions. I looked at ISEA over the last 10 years. They gave more than $2 million to the Iowa Democratic Party and to Democratic candidates. They've given money to every single Democrat on this panel, and Senator Hogue's predecessor, Senator Mike Gronstall, received $154,000 over 10 years from the ISEA. So if we're going to talk about special interest money influencing this, I think we've got to be honest. Go to the Iowa Ethics and Campaign Disclosure Board, and you can look there.
We are the union.
Can I please have it quiet? Please, quiet.
Okay. Well, I think very clearly what we're seeing is an illustration that we need government that puts people above profits. It's true that some groups have supported different candidates. I think as was pointed out here, unions are made of people, of hardworking people, average people, who just want a fair shot at a good life. I think that's a pretty big contrast to hedge fund managers who, as Senator Hogue said, are shaking out their spare change cup to flex their muscles over politics. Regarding the changes that we just saw with Chapter 20 and also conversations with educational savings accounts, I think a lot of this is part of a national move towards making everything a center for profit. Moving on from that, I think that our first priority has to be our public schools. And we have to avoid making private schools a target, because there are good private schools out there where students are receiving some other options, and parents may have some different values that they want children to benefit from in private schools. So if we want to support schools, we also need to recognize that Iowa already gives a lot of support in the form of taxpayer dollars to private schools, and that's a good thing, but we need to make sure that public schools are there for the common good.
Representative Hinson?
I have a kindergartner in the Linn-Mar School District. My children will be going to public schools, and they will remain a priority for me as a legislator. Thank you very much for supporting that, because I do feel that's important. I met a few weeks ago, actually, with Kelly, who's sitting in the front row here, and we had a really great level-headed conversation about the homeschool programs and the impact that they have on students, and their safety and their well-being. And we had a really great open and honest conversation about that. And I will continue to have those dialogues going forward. I'm willing to level with anyone. I called a retired teacher who called me during the debate. I called her back on my drive home on Thursday. We didn't end up agreeing when we got done with that conversation, but we did have a level-headed conversation, and I walked away with some clear takeaways, and I think she did too. So I would just encourage you, as we're having these conversations, reach out in a level-headed way. Let's take emotion out of it. Let's focus on the facts. And let's have those conversations going forward, so this can be about the best education for our public schools. And I think it's also important, we mentioned, that this may not be going through this year. I really am concerned about the cost of what that would mean if we did go to a voucher system. And it is a significant amount of money. And I think that needs to be a topic of the conversation as we continue forward. I said it last time, I think obviously the support needs to be about what is best for the student. That is our ultimate goal, but I am also concerned about what that would cost if we went to that kind of a program. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the comment about being level-headed, but times like these, when working men and women are being silenced and are having their rights taken away from them and having their schools starved to nothing, it's hard to remain silent. And the passion and the passionate Iowans who are out there, they deserve to have their voice heard. And I'm frankly so sick and tired. This week we can't hold up signs or charts or use real information to show people in Iowa legislature. I mean, if you're afraid of real information and visual aids, like what kind of country or state are we coming to? But and we hear a lot about people talking about campaigns and all that kind of stuff. The commercials I saw on TV and the literature that I saw being handed out by some people who say that public education was going to be a priority of theirs. When you vote for 1% for our schools, it's part of an agenda. It's part of it is part of a right-wing agenda. What you do, you starve our schools to nothing. Then you say after a couple years, well, they're failing. Their achievements aren't as high. And then you say, next year, guess what? Here comes the ESA voucher so that our public schools have nothing left. And it's such a shame that we're doing this to our kids in the state of Iowa. So great that people are listening, but I want to make sure people are being heard. And if you're going to come and some of the first bills you sign are 1% for education, and some of the bills that you vote for are for collective bargaining, then you should tell people that at the doors and in your commercials so they actually know what they're voting for and what they're going to get in the Iowa legislature.
Please keep your applause. Representative Zona.
I don't believe there's a lot of support for the voucher system in House District 95 from what I heard. So.
Is it not on?
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. So I do not believe that there is a lot of support for a voucher system in House District 95. So.
Are you lying?
Please keep your comments.
No, sir, I'm not.
Thank you. We have to first fully fund our public schools, and not at 1.1%, which was ridiculous again this year. That's a 7-year trend. We have one legislator, or many legislators, I'm not sure I know of one, who is proud that they voted for the collective bargaining bill to save our public schools, well, I got to tell that person, hey, if I'm drowning, please don't come to save me.
Please keep your applause. Senator Horn?
Well, the thing that kind of bothers me the most is that I hear this statement kind of, I'm for it, I'm for this good, I'm making it good, I'm going to do this, and then they vote no. In other words, they vote against it, but talk that they're for it. I get tired of that. Thank you.
All right, the next question, we'll start with Senator Holt. What are you hearing from your constituents about Planned Parenthood and any possible funding changes?
Well, the Iowa Senate already voted on the legislation that targets Planned Parenthood. Sometimes it's said as defunding Planned Parenthood. That's actually a misnomer. That's not accurate. What the legislation does, it says Planned Parenthood's not eligible for Medicaid reimbursement the same way every other medical provider would be eligible for Medicaid reimbursement. The reason that's a problem is because obviously that's one of the ways that a lot of Iowans, especially low-income women, get access to health care. I'm not ashamed to acknowledge the fact that my wife and I, when we were in college together, used Planned Parenthood. I don't think there's anything, we got to stop demonizing Planned Parenthood. It's a provider that provides, another thing that's got to be really clear is, and people still are confused about this, no state or federal dollars go to abortions provided at Planned Parenthood, and it's because we fund birth control and family planning through entities, including Planned Parenthood, that we're at a more than 40-year low in abortion rate in this country. And if you continue to make birth control accessible, you can drive those numbers even lower.
Overwhelmingly, the communication, emails, personal contacts, et cetera, that I've received from my constituents, it could be summed up like this. Please keep access to women's health care open and broad spectrum. Don't limit it. And unfortunately, the politics over the word Planned Parenthood and the entity is driving kind of the wrong impression. So, and I will vote to keep access open and wide.
I'm hearing, can you hear that? People are very concerned that women still have access to all of those health services, and we're absolutely committed to making sure they do. There are hundreds of clinics across this state that provide all of those Medicaid reimbursed health services. So I'm absolutely committed to making sure they have access. And the other thing is I'm absolutely committed to making sure that we have the same amount or more resources going for those health services. The problem is that if you have abortion providers, and Planned Parenthood is an example, more than 50% of their revenue actually comes from providing those abortions. And while state,
Please keep your comments. Please, quiet.
So do I get a little more time?
Yes.
So while state and federal money can't directly go for abortions, it can go to keep the lights on, to pay for human resources, to pay the doctors. And so I am hearing from many of my constituents that they're uncomfortable, given the controversial nature of abortion, having taxpayer dollars going to an organization whose primary source of health services revenue is abortion. So we're going to provide access, we're going to provide the same amount of funding, but SF2 would not allow that for abortion providers.
Do not be fooled.
Please keep your comments.
This bill is about an agenda enforcing people's personal opinions on women's health care. Early when this bill was being discussed, we found out that the list of these hundreds of healthcare options for women included dentist offices. Wow. I don't know about you, but I don't think I want to get my yearly at the same time when I'm getting a root canal. Please. We've seen places in Texas where access has been cut off. Unwanted pregnancies have increased. Sexually transmitted infections have increased. Maternal mortality has increased. And that is because many, many, many people of all walks of life get prenatal care from Planned Parenthood, get family planning services from Planned Parenthood, get cancer screenings from Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is not the enemy here. My constituents have overwhelmingly contacted me. I would say it's one of the things that I get the most number of contacts, phone calls, Facebook messages, and questions about on doors in support of preserving women's health care.
I said it the last time I was here, and I'll repeat it again today. I received services from Planned Parenthood, and I'm proud that I spoke up about that. I'm probably the only person who is a Republican who said something about that. And I do believe that we need to preserve women's access to health care, so I've been doing my due diligence, and I have been calling around to make sure that services are available. I also pitched an amendment that would require a database be built of a real list of providers. I agree that list that came out, it was not a good list. And I think if we're going to do something in state government about this, it needs to be an accurate list with full information of where women can actually get these services. What bothers me about this bill also, and I said last time, I think that this is one of those areas where I tend to think the government should stay out of it. What bothers me is that this bill does grow government, and I'm about limited government and getting the government out of my life. And I just, that's a concern of mine going forward as well, as preserving access. So I will say that I have done my due diligence. I believe the services are available, but I still believe that we need to go about this in a different way because it does grow our government.
How will you vote?
Would you keep your comments, please?
I mentioned that I have an amendment. I think that could be a make or break for me. If we don't have access to this database and this information is not readily available in a way that's easily accessible for women, then I will probably be a no. But if I can make sure that these services are available in a way that will preserve access, I might be a yes. But that's where I am right now. I just want to be honest about that. Okay? Thank you.
So when we're talking about Planned Parenthood, 2 to 3% of their services they provide are abortion services. The rest are critical things like cancer screening, checking people for STIs, healing them from those, family planning information. And, you know, I personally want to reduce the number of abortions, and the number of abortions are really low in the state of Iowa. But when you cut off critical sources of people and information and health care, like they did in Texas and some other states, like this bill would do, what ends up happening is the abortion rates rise across that state dramatically. And other facts that Representative Bennett beat me to, but so Planned Parenthood is a critical partner in reducing the amount of abortions that are happening in the state of Iowa. And they're also, you know, it's another attack on rights. And I'm just so sick and fed up about it. We had at the beginning of the legislative session, Republican legislators who stood up, talked about freedoms and rights and, you know, how great that is. But it's just, apparently when it's not pertaining to my freedoms and rights and many other freedoms and rights, in my doctor's office, sitting across the table at a collective bargaining session, all of those sorts of rights and freedoms I believe are under attack, and that's all I've seen from this legislative session so far. So I hope things get better. I don't know if it will until November. So thank you for that. Time up again.
This issue for me, I have 4 daughters at home. They have a mother that they'd rather talk to about these things than their father, naturally.
Can you,
I said I had 4 daughters at home. They have a mother that they'd rather talk to about these things than their father. I did ask one of my daughters the other day about where her friends would go for those needs. She said she knew some of them that went to Planned Parenthood. When we make decisions, I don't think any of us make them strictly on our own. For me, I am undecided personally. Talked to many people. Many of them surprised me. They're strong Republicans that are for funding Planned Parenthood. So I'm listening to my constituents, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Well, I'm definitely for the Planned Parenthood funding, and I'm concerned that this is just another attack on one of those organizations that they feel hasn't supported them, that it's more of a partisan thing than the spin that you're getting. I feel it was the same way with the attacks on collective bargaining when we had something that worked well for more than 40 years. And arguably, there may have been some argument that there needed to be some precise surgical things done to it, but not to bomb the thing. Same thing with Planned Parenthood. So once again, I think it's this wolves in sheep clothing. Is that right? Yeah. So don't be fooled.
Senator Horn?
Thank you. I remember before we got some laws passed and stuff, that we had women in parking lots in Cedar Rapids that had to go rescue emergency. We had women dying. What could be better than have this Planned Parenthood thing than that? I mean, it's just leaps and bounds ahead helping people. And it's kind of like if a woman feels that she has to have it, she'll go out of state, she'll do all that. That's what happened. And so we come up with what we have the procedure now. I don't know how you could beat it. I just think if you stop funding it, you've got problems. And you got to make sure that's there. And I think they're so misled in what's that money's going for abortion, and it's going for women's health and not abortion. Thank you.
Senator Mathis?
When you get called to the well, I call it the naughty chair. It's when you say something and the Senate president calls you to the well. And so I was called to the well on this particular bill. And I looked around, and I was surrounded by 9 men. And I like to use logic. I like to use facts. What's best for people? What's fair? It's a woman's body. It's her body. I am a firm believer in the separation of church and state, but I certainly respect other people's feelings and the way that they vote on this. We're all brought up differently, and I understand, but I don't agree. So I voted no on the bill that was before us in the Senate. The family planning block grant money that's going to be used for this is taking money away from foster care, from safety and permanency, which is a contract where employees or social workers go into homes and they make sure that homes are safe for children who may have been abused. It's also taking money away from emergency shelter, and these are the kids who need help at a time where there's crisis in their family. UIHC and Unity Point will also be affected by this. Their money will be cut off from this. More birth control means fewer abortions. And now we have to create a system of clinics, and DHS told me they have no idea how they're going to do this. And I don't think anybody who voted yes on this bill asked that. And it is untrue that abortions are primary sources of funding for Planned Parenthood. It's less than 5%, but I guess if you say something confidently, you finally believe it.
Time, thank you. I'm going to start this time with Representative Taylor. We're switching to another topic, the voter ID law. Knowing this bill will disenfranchise certain Iowans, why is this $1 million change needed? Where is the evidence of voter fraud in Iowa?